This is a relay project.
Seriously?
Seriously starts now. Here's Supriya and Ryan.
Hey, it's Wednesday, September 28th, and you're listening to Seriously with Supriya and Ryan. I am Supriya Devetti in Toronto.
I'm Ryan Jesperson in Edmonton. It's great to see your face again.
Yeah, man, you too. A lot going on yet once again in the news. The feds have announced that they're going to lift mask mandates on planes and trains, as well as the vaccine requirement for those that are entering the country. And we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail in just a bit. There's another poll out, and I know, polls don't really matter all that much right now because there's not an election looming, but it is worth noting that Angus Reid has a poll out which puts the Conservatives pretty comfortably out ahead in front with a 7-point lead, a pretty big, I would say the largest gap for a while. So clearly that Pierre Poilievre honeymoon at least sticking around for a little bit. Hurricane Fiona, of course, battered parts of Atlantic Canada as well as Eastern Quebec. And I don't know, we're going to get into some of those comments a little bit later too, Ryan, because why didn't the carbon tax prevent Hurricane Fiona?
I just wish the federal government would have been serious about averting or avoiding hurricanes. Maybe if they would have taken their job more seriously, we wouldn't have had to worry about it. Can we talk for a second about the Armageddon film coming true?
Oh my God,
and the fact that NASA, vis-a-vis humankind, is now landing on asteroids. This is, what are they calling it? It's like the interplanetary defense tactic or something. We're doing what they used to dream about doing in the movies.
Yeah, it's actually very cool if you think about
Super cool.
Because, being able to basically launch a spacecraft into an asteroid and, blow it up is kind of cool, but not to be a downer. But, if the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs actually was pummeling towards us, I think it's like too fast and too large for us to do anything. But
yeah,
I'm always a ball of sunshine on a Wednesday morning.
One of my favorite part about like NASA stories or SpaceX stories or whatever, anything involving rockets and getting out of our own orbit is I just like to imagine the human beings that can come up with this stuff and make it happen. Mm-hmm. I can, if I'm trying to figure out what like a 23% tip is at a restaurant, it takes me a couple minutes. I look like Michael Jordan with my tongue hanging out as I'm trying to do the math. Can you imagine what it takes, the computing power it would take to land something on a moving asteroid? It's just absolutely wild. I'm impressed.
Yeah, it's nuts. The other thing I'm very impressed about, and I continue to be just in awe over, are the, throes of Iranian women that are showing basically the entire world what, courage and bravery are. And I think the rest of the world should really take note. And I hope sincerely that Canadians who are bitching and moaning about freedoms or living under tyranny look to what's happening in Iran and, give their head a shake.
Yeah. Incredibly well said. Remarkable visuals, remarkable courage on display. And you hope that the world is, with regards to, in particular, the Western world, truly endeavoring to understand the significance of what we're seeing and understand why it's significant. These are the stories that we keep an eye on. And, of course, that includes last week. You and I have seen over the past few weeks, at least, as we pay attention to this story in particular, a pretty wild headline about fraudulent credentials in police training, too. And I know that we brought this up in past, as it turns out several experts who were training law enforcement on crisis intervention, like PTSD response and other critical issues, actually had false credentials from degree mills. So in the last month alone, that means that we've heard about nurses, healthcare aides, and now cops with fake credentials. The problem with degree mills and fraudulent credentials has been on the rise in recent years. And so if you're a regulator or an association or a licensing body, it's more important now than ever before to provide trustworthy training.
And if you need to provide trustworthy training, then you need a trusted training partner to help you prevent that fraud before it happens. And that's why we want to tell you about We Know Training. They've got over 20 years of industry experience. We Know Training is your one-stop solution partner. It enables associations, regulators, and nonprofits worldwide to develop and deliver and monetize training that matters. They've got in-house customer support, e-learning development, proprietary LMS, and marketing. So let We Know Training handle your online training and content needs so that you and your team can get back to doing what you and your organization do best. And you may be used to a plug and play LMS software, but imagine what your organization can do with the right support. You'll be in great company. There are tons of success stories from We Know Training partners like the Cannabis Regulatory Branch of British Columbia, the Alberta Hunter Education Instructors Association, as well as the College of Midwives of Ontario.
We Know Training can help you reach a larger audience, monetize your training program, create impactful courses hassle-free, and deliver top-tier training to generate reoccurring revenue. As a fully managed solution partner, We Know Training handles every step along the way. They make online learning engaging, fun, and your learners will actually retain and apply the information in the real world. So if you're looking for a partner who will provide high-stakes training without the stress, look up We Know Training at weknowtraining.ca.
The lead.
So our lead story this week, is this the chickens coming home to roost?
I don't know how you want to qualify it or if I would necessarily put it that way, but what we're of course talking about is the fact that the RCMP is now reviewing a statement from a rather prominent far-right figure who is claiming he was drunk when he made these comments on a live broadcast about sexually assaulting Pierre Poilievre's wife. Now, the comment then led to a pretty strong condemnation from, Mr. Poilievre, which one would very much expect. I'll read it for those that are listening to us on the podcast. This weekend, I became aware of disgusting comments made by Jeremy Mackenzie and another man where they discussed sexually assaulting my wife. These men are dirtbags. Frankly, like most Canadians, until about a month ago, I'd never heard of Diagolon and these losers. They are all odious. My office has referred these comments to the RCMP to assess whether criminal charges should be laid. This kind of garbage has no place in Canada. No one should face this abuse. People can attack my politics. They can call me names. They can protest my ideas and what I stand for. But threatening my wife and family is appalling, and I will not tolerate it. Leave my family alone. So now, you've pointed out, is this chickens coming home to roost? The only reason why I have a little bit of hesitancy with saying, emphatically yes, is because I don't think Anita did anything, his wife, that is, to put herself in this position.
Yeah.
I don't think any family member
Can I interrupt and retract already?
Okay, yeah.
Because this I'm not implying at all that this
No, and I'm not saying you
anything
are.
to do with Pierre Poilievre's wife at all.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just saying, if you wrestle with pigs, you're going to get covered in shit. Maybe that's the better barnyard analogy here.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's just unequivocally, absolutely unacceptable, appalling, ridiculous, disgusting. Let me be clear. But Pierre Poilievre has not had an issue with Diagolon or the far right or Jeremy Mackenzie at all whatsoever. As a matter of fact, about a month ago, when photos surfaced of the two of them shaking hands at a campaign event, and you and I were both reasonable about that. I don't crack on politicians or celebrities for who they shake hands with. They shake hands with hundreds of people at every single event. But when he learned who he was, he still refused to comment on it. He still refused to condemn Diagolon. He hasn't, quite frankly, given a shit about anything that these guys have said about anybody else. So when it did hit close to home, to all of a sudden have a strongly worded statement about the dirtbags and losers, I think it's no wonder that some people are kind of wondering where Pierre Poilievre was on this for the last year or so.
Yeah, and I think that's, a more than fair comment to make. The RCMP has confirmed that they're, reviewing this, and for, Pierre's statement, it's interesting that he says that he only became aware of them about a month ago because he was present in the House of Commons back in February when their group's name was repeated at least a few times. Rachel Gilmore of Global News has sent the Poilievre camp back when it was they were in the throes of the leadership race, questions about Mr. Mackenzie and his organization. And, the response from the Poilievre camp was to attack Rachel Gilmore. So he hasn't responded to these sorts of things in the best way. But let me ask you this. Are you now optimistic, I guess, or more glass half full that this will at least be a bit of a tipping point in terms of, the change in tone from maybe his camp? Maybe now these guys aren't just a funny haha meme factory, and it's oh shit, they actually do put out threats against people.
Well, I just hope that this is a wake-up call for everybody, because what's this I know that this is what's the literary the greatest trick that the devil ever pulled was to convince people that he didn't exist. And I think that people oftentimes with regards to these these far right groups and oftentimes we've seen them in action and represented at events like the truck convoy, the Ottawa occupation, cue the angry emails about I'm just a grain farmer from Saskatchewan and how dare you loop me in with the rest of these racists and white supremacists, not calling I'm so sick of these caveats. Yes, I'm not calling everybody on the truck convoy a white supremacist or a racist or somebody who jokes and talks about sexual assault. But how many examples do we need to see before we start to characterize these people as who they are and the threat that they present? I mean, this is, what's he saying now? Oh, I was drunk. I mean, people that have seen this clip talking about Mrs. Poilievre and people who have heard other clips from these guys on their live streams, first of all, they're not stumbling and slurring. I don't believe the whole I was drunk thing. I mean, if you're going to throw it out there, stand by your words. I know that he's issued some sort of a tepid apology, but the actual content, Supriya, for the people that haven't heard it, what they're talking about here, and it's disturbing to hear. This is going to be really triggering for some people. I mean, it's awful. They're talking about, how they'd like to rape people. One guy and his girlfriend says, the two of us, we talk about raping people all the time. It's a power thing. We want them to know that we can exert our power. They're spelling out their perspective on this kind of thing, and it needs to be called out for what it is.
Yeah. To your point about the apology from Mackenzie, it is worth noting that he, did say that, he feels bad if his wife or anybody is offended, but then went on to say that, I would hope he'd be a bigger man than that and have some thicker skin than that if he's going to be prime minister. But obviously, I would never condone something like that. So, I mean, a little bit of a not really a wholehearted apology there. So
he just hopes that he would be cooler about people threatening to rape his wife. He just hopes he would be cooler about that.
I don't know who he thinks any, person on the planet would be cool with that. But
are we starting to just figure out, can we just call it how it is? Are we starting to figure out that these guys are just a bunch of idiots, as a matter of fact?
Are you just figuring that out now?
You know what I mean?
I don't think these guys were straight A students in school.
Yeah, upon due consideration, we've realized that this guy may lack some of the basic intellectual computing power to but however, these people have been lauded as heroes. I mean, these people find support from thousands of individuals across the country. And that's the thing that makes me especially nervous, is that they're not doing their live stream. They're not saying this stuff to nobody, Supriya. Yeah. They have an audience.
Well, it's interesting because, you could talk about their supporters, and that is worrying in and of itself, right? Having the fervent support for this kind of rhetoric and these kinds of movements more generally. But what actually I find more worrying are the people that are complacent about it or don't think it's a big deal, or, tend to say, well, it's just a joke, or these are just losers on the internet and it's just stuff that's happening online. Stuff that happens online spills over into real life all the time. And things that start online, don't necessarily stay there. And this isn't 1995. Like the internet is real life in a lot of ways, right? And you can't ignore online threats that are coming your way. And I don't know. I really do sincerely hope that this at least tempers some of the singling out of journalists like Rachel Gilmore from the Poilievre camp and from the Conservatives more generally. But let me ask you one last question about this, because I want to tie it into something we talked about on Real Talk on Friday. And that was, the Conservatives really making a big deal out of a poorly worded, jokey tweet that a freelance journalist put out there. Do you think now the CPC feels a little bit silly about going full tilt on Dale Smith, claiming that, they felt threatened by him and over this, when like your leader's wife is actually being threatened with rape?
Yeah, the context on that, Journo Dale from his account suggesting that Conservative MP Garnet Janus made a joke so bad or a joke so lame that if a horse was that lame, it would be taken out and shot. And of course, the Poilievre camp, the federal party, torquing it to come across or to portray it as a threat that the MP should be shot, full stop. Smith, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's refused to walk it back. He's dug in his heels and he's refused to apologize. We have mixed feelings on that. You and I both talked about that. People can check the archive if they like. I would say this. Number one, I don't think the Conservatives are embarrassed, because I don't think that there's much that embarrasses politicians of any party anymore. And number two, I will say this. After Mr. Poilievre releases this statement calling these guys dirtbags and losers, talking about the odious nature of this, he'd better stand up and take a serious position on what actual threats look like versus ones that aren't, because if not, he's going to be accused of being disingenuous and part of the problem.
I agree with that, but I wonder if the people that are going to be doing the, accusing of him being disingenuous, like, does that fall on deaf ears because it's not coming from their own camp? Like, do you think this turns off people within the conservative movement more broadly? Like that, I don't think. It may piss off some, further right PPC voters that are clearly, at least from Angus Reid polling, seem to be migrating towards the CPC right now. But if it's just a bunch of like, Jean Charest supporters that feel a little bit slighted by this, I don't know if that moves the needle, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'd like to see this become less partisan. I mean, I'd like to see a statement from the Prime Minister and Jagmeet Singh and who do we say? Elizabeth May now, I guess. And but I'd like to see statements in support from all federal politicians that are saying this has nothing to do with whether he's the Conservative leader or the Liberal leader or no leader at all. This is unacceptable in politics. And it comes back to what Jeremy Mackenzie's saying, his delusion around this. If Pierre Poilievre wants to be Prime Minister, he better get thicker skin. He can get thicker skin about things like his policy sucks, or you don't like his approach to this, or you don't think he's a great orator, or you think he needs to be better prepared in question period. No politician needs to have thicker skin about rape threats, and I'm happy to see the police are investigating, and I hope that something comes of this. It's about time these guys get shut up.
Also, there's this.
So as we mentioned off the top there, Ryan, the feds have officially announced, this is widely expected, but they've officially announced that as of October 1st, planes and trains will be mask-free. This is what the Prime Minister tweeted. Update. Effective October 1st, we're removing COVID-19 border and travel measures. We'll continue to follow the latest available science and do whatever is necessary to protect your health. Stay protected by keeping your vaccinations up to date. And then it says more here, and there's a link presumably on the announcement or, where to get your vaccines. Look, I think we are in the position we are in, and by that I mean a great deal of when it comes to, hospital wait times and the collapsing of our healthcare system, and the fact that more people have died in 2022 than in 2021 of COVID, like all of these things that we're sort of numb to because we just get fucking baffle gab from politicians at every level when it comes to this. Like, they're not following the available science. Like, they're following the available polling. Like let's just call it what it is, right? Like masks do reduce transmission, irrespective of whether or not you want to wear one. And you can as an adult and as somebody living in a free country can say you don't want to fucking wear one, and that's fine. But like, why do we have to pretend? It's the science that says this. And what's interesting is that, journalists that were covering the announcement when it was made, and it was made by like the civil service side of things, as well as like the health minister, I believe, was there. This is a tweet from a journalist, Sonia Aslam in Vancouver from City News. And she says, some confusing messaging out of this announcement. The feds are scrapping the mask mandate, but also encourage everyone to keep wearing one. When pressed, they say people who don't like wearing a mask are making the lives of airline staff hard. Okay, that doesn't sound too scientific to me either. That sounds like you're trying to make, the lives easier of the poor flight attendants that have to deal with rage while they're like up in the air. So I don't know. It's like, why can't government just be honest with us about what they're doing and why they're doing it? Like, we're just constantly shooting ourselves in the dick over this stuff.
So you're not necessarily peeved or perturbed that the mask mandate is lifted on airplanes. We always say trains. What are people talking about? Are people talking about like subways in Toronto, or are people talking about actual
it's like via
trains?
It's like,
are Canadians regularly taking trains?
They should, I guess.
This a thing?
I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm
coming to you from Western Canada. If somebody takes a train, it's like for their 25th wedding anniversary, and it costs like $6,000 to go to the mountains. Are people actually? We say planes and trains like it's a regular. Anyway, I digress. Maybe that's the Westerner in me. But on planes, are you just pissed off that they're claiming to be following the science? Because I don't hear you or notice you actually digging in on actually removing the mask mandate. Are you okay with that?
Like, I'm still gonna wear one. Whatever. Like, I don't know. Like, and I understand like masks work best when there are more people wearing them. Like, I'm not oblivious to that very obvious fact. But like, I get where people are. I get that people are sick of this. I get that people want to pretend as though this is no longer an issue. But I mean, I guess is just what grates me the most, to your point, is that we're not being honest about it. Like, we're all fucking adults. Like, just be honest. Say that like you don't want to do it anymore, because like other jurisdictions aren't doing it anymore, and you find that there is no longer a wide public buy-in for this sort of thing. Like, I can sit here and rage against wearing masks, like the fact that we need to wear masks all I want, but like I'm not going to change people's opinions over it. And
we know why there's not public buy-in anymore, though, right? We know there's not public buy-in anymore because the public has done what has been asked of them over the past couple of years, including at the very beginning when there was no vaccine available. Isolating and quarantining and masking up. I mean, no one's ever going to forget sterilizing our cereal boxes when we got home from the grocery store because we were willing to do anything, whether it seemed ridiculous or not, because we had no experience in a pandemic, except for those of us, that are 105 years old. And so now that people have been, some people have been
SARS
boosted.
Was in 2003, wasn't it?
Like, it was.
Okay.
No, but SARS didn't
it
really.
A pandemic.
SARS didn't impact anyone's. Maybe Toronto, but SARS didn't even. I get your point. But actually, out here on the prairies, the medical science is a little bit different. I'm not sure if you knew that, but we didn't experience SARS. In all seriousness, though, people now have had 4 or 5 shots. So attitudes have changed. There's less sympathy for people that are in COVID wards in hospitals because the majority of people in COVID wards in hospitals are unvaccinated. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And that's bound to impact public opinion, don't you think?
That's true. Okay, so like that's true, fine. But you can also be vaccinated and be older, or be vaccinated and have underlying conditions, and you're in there. And let me just point out that a good chunk of children are still unvaccinated or aren't fully up to date with their vaccinations, right? And I think the public would have a much different opinion of this if we actually had adequate and robust reporting on some of those pediatric hospitalizations that are going on, not just in Canada, but around the world. And so to your point, it's like we're almost in this weird black hole of data. So people aren't, getting the right information to even make the individual choices for them should they want to make them. And it's like we're screwed either way. And I guess just given the fact that we're talking about planes and this will come October 1st. And then soon it'll be like, American Thanksgiving rush and then Christmas travel rush, right? Like holidays, people going places. Do we not think that that's going to impact staff shortages? Like there are already staff shortages up the wazoo. And it seemed as though masks were at least protect some level of protection for folks that were working in airports and on airplanes. So like what happens when those go away?
Yeah, I'm curious to see what it's going to look like with regards to, who's going to buy in and continue to wear a mask on public transit or to continue wearing a mask.
Dorks like me
on long haul flights. I'll wear a mask. I'm going to wear a mask, but I'll tell you why.
Like us.
Mostly because I just put my head back on the headrest and sleep with my mouth open, and so the mask now it has nothing really to do with preventing COVID-19 and has everything to do with preserving my dignity.
Seriously?
What is it doing to prevent disasters? What has the federally imposed liberal carbon tax, because I come from a province that it has been imposed on, done for the environment? How come it didn't prevent Hurricane Fiona?
That is rocket scientist Rosemarie Falk, Conservative MP out of Saskatchewan. Supriya?
I like, what do you even say to that? Like, is she...
It's amazing.
She can't be that dumb. You can't be that dumb. Nobody can be that dumb. No adult, no human adult in 2022 can actually think that a carbon tax that was instituted nationwide, not that long ago, could have prevented somehow a hurricane that was accelerated, or a tropical storm once it, reached Canada, that was accelerated by a changing climate. Like, I don't know how to put this another way, but like things aren't instantaneous, and like emissions do take time to come down.
Okay.
Once stuff is in the atmosphere,
but you're actually,
you can't just,
you're actually legitimately providing a valid, evidence-based response to one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard in the House of Commons, and that's saying something. I give you credit for providing an actual serious answer until I interrupted you to something that is so nonsensical and so ridiculous. I'm wondering if Ms. Falk just really wanted to get mentioned on Seriously.
Oh, I would imagine so. But like, you were talking about people being incapable of being embarrassed, or politicians no longer being capable of shame. Like, how do you say something like that and then like pretend to be an adult? Like, how do you expect people to take you seriously afterwards? And I don't know. It's like, now do like her caucus members have to sit there and pretend like, yes, I'm very intelligent. I have excellent point. Yes. Why didn't the carbon tax prevent Fiona? Like, how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this?
Well, I'm not trying to be a huge jerk, but I would guarantee that more than 50% of her constituents would heartily endorse her message. And I wonder if maybe somebody mentioned that to her at one of her Coffee with Rosemary events through the summer. And I wonder if maybe this was to play a little bit to her base. If you're a Saskatchewan-based MP, I mean, really, aside from Andrew Scheer and before him, maybe Ralph Goodale when he was there. I mean, who do you think of prominently that speaks out from their position in Saskatchewan that gets a lot of national attention? Maybe she was just trying to get mentioned. Maybe she's trying to get her name on the radar. I don't know, because I can't think of any tactical justification for taking a public position like this.
Yeah, neither can I. So maybe this is it. Maybe this is all about, endearing herself to potential spot on that front bench.
Can I say this? Spoke to Ann Castleman, who's a science journalist. She wrote a great piece in The Walrus about how the UK is winning the race against climate change. And people can check that out in the Real Talk archives. And she was talking about the BC heat dome. And she said last summer, you look around you and still nothing changes. Everybody's just driving around in their cars. Everybody's living per usual, running their air conditioning units and acting like it's not happening to us. And I feel like a lot of the pushback on things like the carbon tax, too, the same sort of a thing. People expect to see immediate response. They expect to see immediate reaction from Mother Earth as she heals in front of our very eyes. And I think maybe people are starting to I don't know if people ever really grasp it, but the whole point of this thing, the whole point of carbon pricing is to change behaviors long term to try to ensure that we don't go extinct.
Yeah, although with comments like that, maybe we deserve it.
We might. Hey, people can follow us all over the place at Supriya and Ryan on Twitter. And of course, we're also on Instagram at SeriouslyPod. And Supriya, it means so much to us when people are sharing this podcast, sharing this show with people they know would enjoy it.
Yeah, totally. So check out seriouslypod.com and make sure to send us email, hate or love, if it's, up your alley, talk at seriouslypod.com. And Ryan, you and I will be back, not next week, the week after.
That's right. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks for checking out Seriously.
Seriously is hosted by Supriya Dwivedi and Ryan Jesperson. Technical producer, John Hicks. Executive producer, Josh Dunford. Account coordinator, Lawrence Terlego. General manager, Katie Cook-Shivers. Human resources, Lena Shepard. Voiceover by me, Tangi. Seriously is a relay project. For more, check out seriouslypod.com.